So after having done monopoly and perfect competition, we shall look into the market form of monopolistic competition. So here we shall see the output and price determination and a new concept of product differentiation. A brief history to this monopolistic competition. Now, the classical theory of price had only two models and they of competition, and that was perfect market on one extreme and monopoly on the other. So, as time went by, we see that there is increasing competition, and the perfect market non-monopoly was able to explain that emerging business decisions that were being taken by firms. Advertising and selling cost was also becoming a part of firms' activities. The other thing that was observed was firms were expanding output due to a decreasing cost, but the size of the firm was not increasing. And the assumptions associated with perfect market was no longer holding the real market conditions. So, in this scenario, a new idea was developing, and that idea was a result of the long series of arguments and publications and several articles that emerged against pure competition or perfect market. And this period of the 1920s is also known as the Great Cost Controversy. So, the cost study of cost itself went through changes. So, Piero Sraffa of in 1926 wrote the famous The Laws of Return under Competitive Conditions. So it was no longer the perfect market or the monopoly, but there was a competitive condition that emerged. And Piero Sraffa suggested the introduction of a falling demand curve of an individual firm. Now, it also came in that the general equilibrium approach could be applied in some sense to understand the firms in this particular market by extending these ideas also of external economies. The other idea that emerged during this period was the U-shaped selling cost curve into the model. Now, these kind of changes were happening, and by the end of this controversy, two important publications came in. One of Edward Chamberlain, The Theory of Monopolistic Competition, in 1933, and the other one of Joan Robinson, The Economics of Imperfect Competition, 1933. Now, Edward Chamberlain uses the word monopolistic competition to explain this new emerging firm behavior, and the other was talking about imperfect market. So that is how these terms come into being. Now, Chamberlain's, we shall be looking into the Chamberlains model here, and some assumptions that Chamberlain had made will also be here, presented here. Now, we have a large number of buyers and sellers in the group. Unlike the market here, there is an idea of group, which I will mention to you in just a few minutes here. And the product is differentiated, but they are yet close substitutes of each other. There is free entry and free exit from the group. That means firms can join the group and firms can exit the group. Profit maximization, of course, is the rationale for the firms in the long run and the short run, and prices of technology and factors of production is given. And firms behave as if they know the demand curve and the cost curve with certainty. Each firm behaves as though it knows its demand curve and the cost curve completely. And in the short run, maximization of profit implies maximization of long run profits as well. So Chamberlain introduced selling cost for the first time. So this real world scenario emerged from away from the perfect market and that of monopoly. Now this imperfect market lies somewhere between the two end of perfect market and monopoly, and knowledge is widely spread between the participants, but not as perfect as that of the perfect market. So there we assume that there is a perfect knowledge among the firms. Here, that perfect knowledge is not there, but there is the presence of knowledge, or there is a spread of knowledge between the firms. The other distinguishing feature happens to be that the average revenue curve of the firm is downward sloping throughout its length. Product differentiation. Now, Chamberlain introduced this two new variables into the study of this kind of an emerging market. The first one is called product, and the other one as selling activities. Now, what is this term product here? Each firm has a unique product, and this uniqueness is what is developed, the idea is further developed into product differentiation, and each product is different from the other product in some very peculiar way, in some unique way. Examples of such markets are plenty in our day-to-day life, which is much more realistic than the example of perfect market. Here you can have restaurants, hotels, hairdressing salons, then soaps, and various kind of toiletries and household goods. Many of them come under this monopolistic market, and each product that we use in one category, they appear to be different from each other in some unique way, and the customers for these goods are the same. For example, soaps or hairdressing salons, the customers are the same, but there are uniqueness in each of the product that is available in the market. Now, product differentiation can be fancied, and this could be because of the advertisements that are surround such products. We see in the market the number of advertisements that come for these kind of goods are very, very large. So it could be for soaps or shampoos or floor cleaners, and all of them come under the monopolistic market. Now, there could also be what is called as a real differentiation. In the case of real differentiation, the product may be uniquely different in terms of the color, shape, size, design, location of the firm where it is being provided. All of this can be actually real differentiation. The earlier one was just by advertising. So any of these things here, and there can be a brand name that could be uniquely liked by customers. So any of these things can create some uniqueness to that particular product. Now, the other very important, interesting character of this market is that the products are closely related to each other. They have high cross elasticities. That means if it is not this, it could be the other one. If it is not a brand of soap, it could be another brand of soap. So it is very easy to understand that products are closely related, but they have also high cross elasticities. So in the other thing that happens in this particular market is that each firm charges a different price, and therefore there is a cluster of price. Unlike the perfect market where we found there is only one price and all the sellers will sell it at that price, in this particular market we find that each seller has got a unique price for his a unique product, and therefore a very unique price itself, or a different price. Because of that, the other thing that we also see is that each firm has a part in that group, but then controls a very small part of the market. So it is not that the entire size of that market for soap has been cornered by one seller. That is not what is happening. If it is toilet soaps, then toilet soap of a particular category, that is a group, and in that group all the firms will have a relatively small share of the market. They don't generally control the entire market for that particular brand of soap, and each individual has very little control over the price, because if the others are also closely related products, so they have a downward sloping demand curve. Mass production is difficult, and there is a tendency to have excess capacity. So each firm because the market is divided among so many of these firms selling similar products, so mass production of that particular brand or that particular unique product may not be possible. So there is a limitation to the size, to the quantity of output of these firms, and therefore firms tend to have excess capacity, and each firm determines its own price and output. The same conditions of equilibrium apply for this as well, and this is done without considering the reactions of the other firm. So how, what is the price of the other firm, the output that this firm is going to decide, that is not decided by the output of the competitive firm. Now, this kind of a market generally also creates unnecessary wastage, and such wastage can be like the excess packaging. Usually, it is the excess packaging, the amount of wastage that it can create in the use of papers and plastics and tin, and all of these are done so that they make their product very unique in terms of branding, in terms of packaging. And we are all familiar with this kind of wastage that happens. How many of us really keep those packets for which they have spent so much time? How many of us keep any of these packets for further use? So there is that part which, for which we are paying, but really there is no use for that, and therefore we consider that monopolistic market generates a lot of waste. Now, what happens to this consumer? The consumers tend to develop loyalty to a particular brand or to particular place for their purchase or to that particular good. And it has a negative, they face a negative slope there. That means they will buy more of that quantity only if the price is reduced for them. So the seller acquires some monopolistic influence on the consumer. So the consumer may go to a particular shop only to buy that particular good, or only buy a particular brand. In that sense, this consumer has been influenced by this monopolistic firm. And if it wants to sell more, obviously it has to lower it. The thing is, even if the monopolistic firm raises its price by a little, then it will not lose all its customers, but can lose some of its customers. Some of those ardent followers of a particular brand may continue with that particular firm. Now, there is another idea that has come in, which is the concept of industry and product group. Now, here there is no industry. In monopolistic market, there is no industry. We have only group. Now, if it is to be understood this way, we can say that the toilet soap industry. So it's not toilet soap industry, because there it is in the consumer goods industry, in the fast moving consumer goods industry. So there are a variety of goods that form that fast moving consumer goods industry, as the word is applied in the marketing language. But as far as we are concerned here, we are only talking about a group. A group is those firms which are producing similar commodities. So the shampoo is a group. Now the sellers of shampoo will attain one particular group, and they all are different brands of shampoos, different quantities, different colors, and so on and so forth. So there is no industry as such for this. There are small groups of different kinds of commodities that we are talking about. And due to product differentiation, it is very difficult to form a market demand schedule, and each price is different from the other. So unlike the perfect market, it is very difficult to draw a market schedule, and as much as the supply is difficult to establish this supply. So we do not know how many of these firms are there in the market. Therefore, it's very difficult to tell that these many products are there in the market, and this is the price at which it can be sold, this is the quantity. These are not known. So it is a very firm specific activity, and each one differs from the other. Now, coming to the profit, loss, and normal profit for this firm in the short run, it follows the same principles of equilibrium as that we have done under the perfect market and monopoly. And in this particular diagram, I'm showing you the normal profit. So normal profit, as a first condition, we know it is the marginal cost must be equal to marginal revenue, and marginal cost must cut MR curve from below. So with that MC cutting MR from below, we get the output at OQ dash, and then we want to know whether the firm is making profit or loss. In this particular case, this is only for one firm, and to understand this, we introduce the average cost curve, and when average cost is equal to average revenue, we get profit. So the price determined is P star, and for normal profit, we can see that the average cost is equal to average revenue. And in the short run, to stay on in the market, to survive in the market, these kind of firms are continuously innovating and creating product differentiation. That is why we, as consumers, we see this market continuously with new products. Some packaging is different, some writing on the cover is different, some shape of it is different, and we may not be very sensitive to that, but these firms are constantly changing it so that they can stay on in the market and capture the consumers as many as they can. Profit and the supernormal profit and loss is also, it is the same. The way of presenting the diagram is the same as I had explained to you earlier when I was explaining the monopoly competition monopoly, and here also we have the same condition. So profit is just what I have explained earlier. Marginal cost is equal to yeah, the MC equal to MR, and MC must cut MR from below. In this particular diagram also you can see that the output is fixed at OM both for the loss making firm and the profit making firm, and with the MC equal to MR, the output that is determined is OM, and OT is the average, OT dash is the average cost when the short run average cost is lower than the short run average revenue curve. Now, once the short run average cost curve is lower than the short run average revenue curve, then it means that per unit there is a certain amount of profit that the firm is making. So this profit per unit of the firm is PT, and the total profit for the entire units that is producing OM is T dash, P dash, P and T. Now, this is the same thing that we have to understand it for the loss-making firm. In the case of a loss-making firm, what the firm will do, what we can do is to raise the average cost curve above the average revenue curve. The same, rest of the rules apply the same. So once the average cost curve is above the average revenue curve, we will find the difference between the average revenue curve, which is also the price. The difference between the price and the cost is the loss per unit. So once we know the loss per unit, then we can find out what is the total loss that the firm is undergoing. So the total loss in this particular diagram is, again for the second diagram, is T dash, P dash, P and T. So only by changing the position of the average cost curve, we can make the firm show a profit or loss. When the average cost curve is below the average revenue curve, the firm makes profit. When the cost curve is above the average revenue curve, then the firm makes loss. That's all that this particular two diagrams indicate, and this was already done in detail when I had done the monopoly market. And what happens in the long run? In the long run, if any of these products make very good profit, in that case there will be new entrant into that group, and again the firms are constantly striving to innovate and produce something very uniquely different. And in the long run, firms can earn only normal profit, because continuously there will be firms that join that particular group, and new entrants will continue till normal profits are there, and once profits don't continue for the firm will leave that particular group. This is what we see in our day-to-day life, when we can see restaurants closing down, some product that was available in the market for a while which we were looking for, then we discover that the product has left the industry, group. Those products don't are not available anymore. This is something which is very common to this monopolistic market. So you understand now that this monopolistic market is very uniquely different from the perfect market, as much as it is away from the perfect monopoly market. But at the same time, it has got features of both uniqueness of the monopolist, and the level of competition, at least a degree of competition of the perfect market, and how these firms can compete each other. It can sell more, like the monopoly market. It can sell more if it reduces the price, and the knowledge that we were talking about is perfect. Here the knowledge is there, but not as perfect as in the perfect competition. So this is one unique kind of thing that took a long time to observe the market, and only when the market was observed this way did they arrive at this study on monopolistic market. So the next topic will be on oligopoly, and I'm sure that you are able to use these notes and the lesson for your classes. So thank you very much.